Hello guys, this is Alan, and I'm going to try to give you some general feedback about your assignment in CS5553. By general feedback, I mean that these are the mistakes that many of you did in the different grade boundaries, and by looking at that, you might understand why you got the grade you got and what you needed to do to move to the next level. Okay, so let's get on with this. The learning outcome 1 says, as you can see in your screens, the learning outcome 1 says the criteria to pass, which is this one, the CPAS criteria. Okay, the CPAS criteria tells you that the ASA demonstrate a good grasp of the business process of the organizational case study, new developments, in the form of BPM diagrams, and it tells how these processes were configured in MySAP. Okay, so the first part of this is that you needed to be looking into the BPMN diagram. So I look into that. There are some issues there. Some of you got the process in different ways. For example, some of you assumed that the inquiry and quotation was part of the process. Some of you didn't. I don't think that is part of the process. That's not the correct way to do, because, for example, as a customer, I can ask for a quotation directly without necessarily go for the whole thing. I can ask for an order. I can place an order directly, without necessarily go for quotation or for an inquiry. So you needed to consider those bits. However, that was not an issue for failing, but that's an issue that needed to be considered for many of you. So you have to be careful when you're doing that. Some of you were very detailed about the BPM diagram, other ones you were very open about and the different steps. So that was not the main problem. So the majority of you did pass in this aspect. Okay. Now, detail how this process were configured in MySAP. That's an issue that many of you didn't do very well. That you forgot that this assignment, this module is CS5553, and it's about configuration. It's not about use. So you needed to focus on the configuration, and particularly if you have a D in your assignment, it's very likely because you didn't achieve what is in the yellow. So if we read carefully, we say like, there is a clear description of which organizational levels and masters are used for each of the processes. Okay, so many of you told me I use this master data and I use these organizational levels, but you didn't tell me anything else. Because the rest of it, if we carefully say that there is a clear description of this and why this data is needed and how this is relevant for the integration process. So the second part of this sentence was very important. Why master data that you're telling me, the customer master data, the material master data, the different views is needed, why is needed, and how this is relevant for the integration of processes. For example, in the customer master data, we have different views. One of the views is about the accounting view, and that view can help you to link with accounting things. Also, for example, you can be looking into the material master data when you look into the sales area of the material master data, for example. That can help you for gather the statistics and the different issues. Okay, so then what was very important is that you explained why the data was needed and how it's relevant. So if you have a D grade, it's very likely, 99% of the cases, is because you didn't explain why the data was needed and how it was relevant for the integration of processes. It was very important to look at that bit, at those two aspects. So if you have a D, it's very likely you didn't do these bits. Now let's move on with the C. So if you have a C and you didn't have a B, means two things. On the first hand is that the explanation of what the data is needed and how it's relevant is not very thorough. So you might have explained some things but not very thoroughly, so that gives you the benefit of the doubt and gives you the C pass and not the D. But you cannot have the B because you need to do that correctly. So to have the D, you need to have a very good explanation of what the data was needed and how relevant for the integration of processes. So all the integration aspects, for example, the integration points at good issue or good receipts. Both of them have an integration point, and you need to explain how that was happening, and then you need to talk about the different the documents that are produced in that. Some of you did, some of you didn't. And also, the screenshots were carefully selected. So if you look into the B merit, you said that the screenshots are carefully selected and there is a clear explanation of how the system helps you derive those transactions. So you need to have that bit. Many of you have a selection of screenshots, not a selection, have a lot of screenshots that were not selected. So you were expecting me to make sense of that, and that was not the case. I was very clear, and I said many times that it needed to be carefully selected. So to have a B, you needed to have a good explanation of why and how relevant for integration of processes, a thorough one, and on top of that, that the screenshots were carefully selected. And there was a good explanation about how the system helped the user to arrive to these transactions. So that was the B merit. And finally, if you have a B and you don't have an A, it's very likely because you didn't achieve the distinction requirements. And distinction requirements, one of the big mistakes that you did is that you didn't read carefully this bit. So you can see here what I'm asking you is the A should demonstrate a position about the lessons that can be learned from configuration of the case study, offering recommendations on how to any RPC configuration process can be more efficient. Is how any ERP configuration process can be more efficient. Many of you focus on how can be more efficient the sales and distribution process. That was not the case. It was not about improving the sales and distribution process. It was about it was about commenting about what are the issues in the configuration process that I saw during my experimentation, and that I have been also studying other modules. For example, in CS5553, you have looked at critical success factors, success and failure for ERPs. So you could have, what you read, reflect on what you have experienced in your configurations. That was the issue. Also in 5549, you could have been looking into aspects of management, project management, and how does affect the whole thing. So there were many aspects that could have been talked about. That ERP configuration is very complex, so you could have noticed any of those ones from the point of usability, from the point of training, from the point of modeling. So you could have done many aspects of that, and the idea was that you were able to reflect and demonstrate that you learn more than just C and B, and that was the A. So there are not many A in the course, but those ones who achieve is because did that, and the majority of you confuse it by focusing on the sales and distribution process. Okay. Now, what I have to move now, in the next one, what I want to tell you next is what about the overall grade. Okay, so you have to be careful here. Learning outcomes are not average. You cannot average learning outcomes. Learning outcomes needs to be passed. So, in order to have a C, as we can see here in this screen, in order to have a C, one of the learning outcomes of the reflective is marked as C, and the remaining learning outcomes is marked as C or B. So you need to have C in both learning outcomes, or C or B, to have a C. Now, in the case you have C or B, it depends on my judgment whether this can be a B or not. Okay, so that could be something. So it's in this case, if you see for having a B, you need to have both learning outcomes as B, or one a B and the other one an A, or one of the learning outcomes for the reflective is C and the remaining outcomes is an A. Also, if you have C and A, it's automatically a B. Also could be that you have a C, a B, and that depends on me. So then the final mark, what I want to tell you here, your final mark is either done by looking at this criteria that you have here, and also will be given to you in the short term, because it could be some cases. I have some cases where the students got B in the exam and C in the essay, for example, and I have to apply my judgment whether that's a B or a C. So for those aspects, I need to revise those assignments more carefully. The same thing will happen if I have the A and a B. So then I need to be looking at the mark registration. That could be an A or a B. So then I have to be looking at those two. And this final mark will be released to you very soon. Okay. But in the meantime, you can take a look at that. And you shouldn't worry, because then it's just about whether you get higher grades or not. I hope this is clear, but still, as I said before, you can book for an appointment in the slots I have given you in Doodle, and we can have a conversation, but we have to be focused conversation because it will be around 7 minutes. So you need to be concentrated on what you need to ask. And I hope this helped you to understand a bit better what you didn't do well and what you needed to do to get better grades. Okay? I'll see you later, guys.